We all ready? I love these mics. They actually work, unlike the ones we have. Okay. Inside joke. Not inside anymore. All right. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023. It is exactly 5:01 p.m. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded for storage and viewing on the district's YouTube channel. Please take notice that adequate notice of this meeting of the South Orange Maplewood Board of School Estimate has been provided in the following manner. Written notice was sent from the Office of the Board Secretary on March 22nd via email to Maplewood and South Orange Township clerks and to the editors of the News Record, Star Ledger, Village Green, Tappan to Soma, and posted on the district website. May I have a roll call, please?
Mayor Dean Daffis,
Present.
Committee Member Jermaine Kripe,
Present.
Committee Member Deborah Engel,
Present.
Village President Sheena Collum,
Here.
Trustee Bobby Brown,
You're right.
Trustee Karen Hilton,
Here.
Board President Caitlin Whitletter,
Here.
Board Member Nubia Duval Wilson.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please join us in a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again for joining us in this special meeting. We appreciate being welcomed by the school district and the school board. Thank you all for hosting us. This is how we do it when the Board of School Estimate convenes. As you all may be aware out there, this is not your first time around the rodeo in this particular meeting. The two townships alternate who chairs these meetings, and it's my turn this evening, and I ask you for your patience as I have never chaired one of these before in this capacity, so please be patient. So welcome, and welcome to those of you who are joining us online. I'm going to turn it over to our administrator, Mr. Burnside, who I believe has a presentation for us. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Daffis. So we've got some new faces and we've got some old faces. So I'm going to start off with a little refresher.
Mr. Burnside, can you please pause for a moment? I'm on YouTube just to make sure the stream is happening and it's showing video unavailable.
President Collum, are you all right?
Mhm. It's not streaming yet? Maybe other people are getting the stream? Are you guys getting it? Okay, great.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation. Okay, so tonight we're going to start out with how we got where we are today. Tonight we're going to go over some of the history of how we got to this meeting. In April of 2021, Resolution 4128 was passed. This resolution revised Policy 8600 regarding student transportation. Also in April of 2021, Resolution 4134 was passed. This deferred the policy change with respect to courtesy transportation to the 22-23 school year. This eliminated courtesy transportation between 1 and 2 miles for select schools. At the August 25th regular session board meeting, the following district goal is approved. By March 31st, 2023, the superintendent of schools will develop a robust transportation plan, which will increase access to transportation district-wide for elementary students as part of the ongoing evolution of the Intentional Integration Initiative. So I'm going to do an overview of some current statistics. This year, healthcare costs increased by approximately 2.8 million, special education by approximately 4 million, and security by 500,000. This presentation does not include the traffic impact of students with parents driving them to school versus getting a bus. This presentation does not take into account incoming kindergartners from Delia Bolden Elementary. Bus costs have increased from $110,000 to $130,000 to reflect industry trends. Reductions in the budget have come from supply lines, about 1.2 million, a decrease in tuition, about 1.1 million, and select insurance, 300,000. We used approximately $1.4 million in reserves to balance this current budget for 23-24 school year. And also the bus capacity was calculated at 43 students with one aide per bus to ensure the bus time was less than an hour and a half. So let's jump into the $130,000 per bus. What does this include? This includes bus driver salary and benefits, fuel, and maintenance of the buses. This projection is built on the theory that there are no tiered routes. Each bus will only have one run. If there is a possibility to tier routes, this will be the contingency. Right now, our Director of Transportation is currently working on our routes. Please know that if a route can be tiered, it will. We have to proceed with an abundance of caution and take into consideration students are going to be shuffled across both towns. Also, we are taking traffic into consideration and do not want children getting to school late. As the routes are being calculated, we are utilizing the recommendation that the target of 43 students will be on each bus. So there's been a lot of question about, can we use ESSER funds for transportation? Unfortunately, per the allowable uses of ESSER funds, transportation is not on the list. We did receive an increase in state aid of approximately $1 million. This was used to help offset the increase in health benefits in the 23-24 budget. This slide just shows our current a snapshot of our transportation budget as of March 5th. Now we are on to subscription busing. For subscription busing, we provide a mandated busing only at the required mileage distance. We plan and execute a subscription busing program for courtesy mileage that's under 2 miles. Survey the community for interest to determine how many seats will be needed, and the board will determine if the parents will cover the entire route cost or a percentage and agree upon the cost. Determine if the district or a coordinated transportation service agency will manage the program, and 1 year of planning time is required to implement the program to ensure the implementation is effective for the community. This could be an option for the 2024-25 school year. Our current transportation. Right now we have 914 students being transported in district. This is all grades. This is K to 12. We have 44 routes on, and we utilize 24 buses. We spend approximately $2.7 million, and approximately 12.6% of the overall transportation budget is for general education students. This is an estimated amount because there are many buses that have a combination of general ed students and special ed students on the same bus. Now we have some demographics. This slide shows a breakdown of current students eligible for transportation. And it's broken down by South Orange and Maplewood. Maplewood's on top. The next slide is the demographics of the elementary schools between 1 and 2 miles. So we're using this year's data, and the demographic breakdown of each is at each quarter mile between 1 and 2 miles. We wanted to show the breakdown of race because the Board of Education is sensitive to the fact that low SES Black students, part of the intentional integration year 1, were traveling the farthest. We thought it was important to try to capture as many students of color who could also potentially be low SES as part of this initiative. This is between 1 and 2 miles for elementary schools. It's the same data as the last slide, only in a bar chart format. Using the same data as before, this is additional students broken out by school. As you can see, the schools are broken out individually, and the biggest schools impacted are South Mountain, Marshall, and Delia Bolden. This is the projected courtesy transportation cost per quarter mile. You will notice that there are 4 scenarios for the elementary schools. This slide shows the additional students, the estimated number of additional buses, and the projected costs at each quarter mile. Just a reminder that this cost is based on $130,000 per bus. This is the projected cost and tax impact. This slide shows the approximate tax impact by percentage and the estimated average tax dollars increased for each town. These figures are based on $505,200 assessed value for Maplewood and $585,341 in South Orange. At 1 mile, you can see approximately $2.47 million. That's equal to a $186 increase for Maplewood and $216 for South Orange. At 1.25 miles, it's $1.82 million with an average estimated tax increase of $137 for Maplewood and $159 for South Orange. At 1.5 miles, it's $1.17 million with an $88 increase for Maplewood and a $103 increase for South Orange. And at 1.75 miles, we have $650,000 with a $49 tax impact for Maplewood and $57 for South Orange. Sorry. There we go. As the budget is built for the 23-24 school year, a 1% increase is equal to $1,281,654, and 2% is equal to $2,563,308. These percentages are important because the state of New Jersey does not allow the tax levy to be in excess of 2%, except for certain exclusions. For the 23-24 budget, we did have a health benefit adjustment of 1.43%, and that amount is $1,836,324. So this helps with our health care increase. And this is the tax levy of 3.43%, so that's the 2% plus the 1.43% health benefit adjustment for 3.43%. Now this excludes our debt service. So the board recommendation is 1.25 miles for elementary students only. The cost is $1,820,000 estimated. That's 1.4% tax impact in addition to the tax levy. So Maplewood taxes would increase $137 and South Orange would be $159. Village President Collum, you requested that we get this as close to 1% as possible at the last meeting. This is where we ended up. And our current budget is right now in review at the county. I talked to the county business administrator today. It's almost done. And as soon as that is done, we will share it with everybody. And we will definitely have it before the next meeting, which would be between April 28th and May 15th, because our final budget hearing is on April 27th. And the next slides are just the appendix, and they have some middle school numbers. I can run through them real quick, or if you guys are comfortable just reading them, it's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Did you want to explain further how you arrived at the 1.25 recommendation as opposed to the 1 mile?
Sure. So that was the recommendation of the board. We did a lot of analysis, and we felt that this would be the most beneficial impact to the community. We looked at race, we looked at everything, and that's how we came up with it. Dr. Taylor.
I can just chime in a little bit, and good evening to everyone. This was a months upon months discussion, very thoughtful. involving board members and board members who were seeking further information and analysis. I think it connected very well to our intentional integration year 2 review that showed that we did have an improvement in the distance that students were traveling who were a part of the intentional integration, but at the same time, a reasonable adjustment was agreed upon to be the 1.25 for elementary students only. We also took time, and the chair of FFT worked with Mr. Burnside to take time to review carefully our last Board of School Estimates meeting and the comments made by the board at that time around the concerns around middle school and other considerations. I think that the board, speaking for the board, from my reflection of their discussions, the 1 mile piece was kind of a gold star, a North Star to lead our discussions, understanding that 1.25 would have a tremendous impact on students in our district.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. At this point, I'm going to open the floor up to the board. Board members, questions and discussion. I'll start with South Orange. Ms. Hilton, did you want to speak first?
I don't have to go first. We can let President Collins go first.
Okay, President Collins.
Yep. You'll leave some time for the rest of us to ask questions?
Yeah, I've got so much, so feel free to cut me off, Mayor Daffis. So first I want to thank the Board of Education for honoring kind of the requests that we had from the Board of School Estimate. There were some slight changes, right? Is that we were hoping to get to the 1 mile. The differential from what we were told or estimated at the time was 770 additional elementary school students to what is now 588, from 18 buses to 14 buses. And what I noticed was a really big swing. First question was going from what the average of $112,000 per bus was in 2022, 2023, to now the estimate of $130,000 per bus. I'll preface that by saying last year we were at the peak of inflation with fuel costs, et cetera, so we were already operating at over 6%. Now, it should be coming down some, so why are we seeing a 14% increase in general ed transportation costs?
So I did run this by Sussex County Co-op. That's the shared service that we use for our busing. And they're seeing still a shortage of buses and drivers. And there might be a little bit of price gouging in there built in as well. And
Yeah.
there's just nothing the state is doing to step in and control this.
It does make a pretty sizable difference from the 112 to the 130, and then the number of additional buses. The next component, and I appreciate all of the information you provided today. So I did create a chart in Excel. I had to put everything in Excel because that's the language I speak. Understanding the capacity report. That was one thing that the Board of School Estimate had requested of the Board of Education, because we were hearing for the parents who are following buses around is that it looks half empty. And for what it's worth, they were correct. The numbers from the actual existing routes and capacity show that there were 620 elementary school students who were assigned, and the total bus capacity was 1,244, and then I deducted for the aides, so that put that at 1,214. So it did show that it was roughly, if you were going to make a generalization without routes and efficiency, is that 50% of seats were available during that time. Is that accurate, Mr. Burns?
Yes, it is, and I saw your spreadsheet, and it was very well done.
Oh, okay. All right, great. Great, then you're speaking my language. I have to turn everything into an Excel.
Go ahead.
Yes, and then of the existing capacity, there were only 2 routes as a part of the 30 that were servicing the elementary school students that were oversubscribed, correct?
That is correct.
So the first question, and it's such a leading question, I hope it's not because I'm watching Gwyneth Paltrow's trial, but one of your goals, which I absolutely agree with, is to get busing capacity to 75% to 85%, which was your number of 40 students per bus and then 45 per student. So you're taking the average right in the middle, right?
Yes.
And so 1,502 students at a 75% capacity, right? Using that number, which is, your 40 students per bus, amounts to about $4.9 million. I'm just giving you an estimate. As we increase capacity to 85%, which would require 34 buses, it goes to $4.42 million. And then my follow-up, the actual question is, if we go to 100% capacity, understanding not every student takes the bus. I know you suggested before, if a student has a tuba and they've got stuff for their sports and all of that, you always want to have a little wiggle room, but you still have to account for the number of students assigned to the bus. Then we're going down to 3.7 million. So the swing of the policy decision, or however you're listening to the co-op, is literally a differential of close to $1.17 million, or, and set in tax terms for the school district, 0.91% reduction. And again, that's the value proposition of 75% capacity versus going towards 100% capacity, understanding not everybody is going to utilize that bus. So it relates back to route efficiency, how we're getting to that number of your goal of at least getting to 85% of capacity versus some buses that were at 17% capacity. Is there opportunity for savings here? Like, did you use very conservative numbers? Because we're also broke right now. It's probably the worst budget season ever for the schools, for the municipalities. Is this a super conservative budget, or is there a possibility with better routing and better efficiencies and really making sure each seat is used that we can get that number down even below 1% and still serve the same number of students?
It's a great question. The other side of that is, do we have enough time to get the kids to school on time? So if we go down this road, that's very tough to do. Right now, we have 30 to 40 minutes built in between each school for our tiered routes.
Yep.
Those go away when we do this, probably. We're trying to keep it under an hour and 15, hour and a half as it is. That's the other side of it. Kids will be on the bus a lot longer.
So in the information you provided to me, unfortunately, the minutes were redacted, so I could not see how long students were actually on the bus. But if we followed the methodology already used for 2022, 2023, and those capacity requirements, was the average of those students who were on tiered bus routes, what was that normal average? Was it 45 minutes? And when you say an hour and a half, you mean 45 to school and 45 back from school, so not a one-way, 90 minutes.
One way, we're trying to keep it under an hour. Yeah. For next year, yeah.
And
For this year, for this current year,
Yeah.
I want to say between 25 and 30 minutes would have been a long bus ride without giving away security.
All right, so I feel like that attorney from Gwyneth Paltrow's trial. So if we mirrored, though, basically we're almost doubling what you were already doing with the proposed, I believe it was 24 buses and 44 routes. We're almost doubling that number. Why would there be any implication that times would increase if the average was 30 minutes this time around? Because we're still getting new buses at 130,000 a pop and servicing those students. Why would we not assume that we could tier those identical? I know you said you didn't want to tier, or there's opportunities maybe for tiering. Why wouldn't we mirror what already happened to ensure that people were on a bus less time?
So we're adding, so at 1.25 miles, we're adding approximately 588 children. That's an enormous task. And
That's an enormous what?
Task.
Yes.
I don't know that 30 minutes between schools is going to allow us to tier the routes. We're going to try. We're going to try very, very hard, but I just can't guarantee that. And if enrollment keeps going up, we have to have a little bit of wiggle room to accommodate that.
I disagree. The number you just said, 588, is equivalent to the tiered routes of what we currently serve in the capacity report of 620 elementary school students, which is serviced by 15 buses and 30 routes. So it's almost like an apples to apples comparison. So I guess I don't want to say disagree, that was the wrong word, that was so rude.
That's okay.
I guess the better question is, why is it different? Because we have a system right now, you have the capacity report that showed 15 buses, 30 routes. I labeled them 1A, 1B, right? And we're proposing a decrease actually from 770 that we originally thought to 588. And that capacity report was based on 620 students, and what we're looking at is 588 students. Why could we not get the exact same efficiency that existed in this school year?
All I can say is we only have 30 minutes between schools, and if we add more buses, it's going to take longer to get those kids dropped off and picked up, especially in the afternoon run.
Perhaps I'm just not understanding completely.
And we can work through that.
Okay.
We can get there.
Okay. I'm going to let others go for right now,
Okay.
and then I'll come back.
Trustee Hilton.
You bet. I also want to share President Collins' appreciation. We really do appreciate how much work what has gone into this, and with all the parents being involved and the school board and the superintendent, how hard you all work. We get that. I want us to take a step back on just the big picture of what the ask is. So we, as the Board of School Estimate, are being asked specifically what, and I want to be clear on what tools we have to make this decision.
Right. So we're requesting courtesy busing down to 1.25 miles. The cost is approximately $1,820,000, or a 1.43% increase. I can't remember the town's breakdown off the top of my head.
South Orange, $159 per average assessed value, and $137 for Maplewood based on their average assessed value.
And then the second part of my question is, we so far have seen no baseline information about the overall budget of what you are proposing. Is that correct?
Correct. It's at the county right now. As soon as it's approved, we'll give it to everybody.
So then the plan would be for the Board of School Estimate to come back and vote once we have all that information.
Yep,
Great.
the window-
I wanted the public to be clear, and I wanted all of us to be clear that we're not taking action tonight
Correct.
on this.
No.
We're just getting information.
And the window from the state is from April 28th to May 15th
Great,
for the next meeting.
great. Thank you.
Yes.
Maplewood? Any questions? Ms. Craig?
No, I had a question, but Sheena covered it.
Okay.
Well, I just had a question about when you talk about the subscription busing in terms of what you're asking for now, like the subscription busing is like a future plan? And that's my other question, I guess. We're talking about money for this year, but what's the planning for future years?
So I apologize. I was supposed to have our courtesy, but I'm sorry, subscription busing expert. She didn't show up today, but Janine Byers from Sussex County Co-op. We've been working with her closely on this. This would be for the 24-25 school year. It just takes about a year to implement and do it correctly. And that's just going to be for anybody between 1.25 miles and below.
I see, so
Oh,
it's
go
giving
ahead.
an option for
Right.
those, okay.
I was going to answer part one of your question about what happens the following year. What you're also doing now is establishing a new floor for us, right? So this approval, if the Board of School Estimates sees fit to do so, will put us in place to continue the 1.25 policy shift for years to come. And the subscription piece will be an add-on for 2 years from now.
So basically, it would be 1.2% increase every year to fund the transportation?
No, you've lifted your floor now, so this is the new normal.
Oh, I see. That
Yes.
makes sense. Thank you.
Also, just about the subscription, we're not using this meeting or saying like, we're going to do subscription busing. We were asked, what does that look like in October? So we wanted to show that we had figured that out. Also, there are a lot of layers to this. We need to see if there's an appetite for it, right? Sending out a survey to parents after everything gets approved, and it is the transportation policy 8600 goes into the new phase of having this 1.25 mile, then we would be asking parents, like, is there an appetite for it? And Sussex County has, Sussex County, I always forget the full name, but anyway, the people we work with for transportation, they are very experienced doing this. We don't have to do this in-house. They can manage it for us, which is what most districts do. So Janine is, like we said, we had invited her to talk about it more. We don't have to belabor the topic now, but we have a relationship with a company that has done this for multiple districts in the state. And they have a system, they have a process, it seems to be very well organized. She went through it with us in FFT. And so if that's something that the community wants, it's something that we could explore and do. Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gripe, any comments or questions?
No, off the top of my head. I think the only thing that concerns me would be the number of vehicles on the road. I know we're talking about transportation time in between, but with the increase of folks returning to work, there are going to be commuter cars in addition to our buses. Is that time of 30 minutes feasible?
We're doing the routes now, so we're working through that to find out if it's going to be possible. But I do remember President Collum did make a good point that when you have more buses, that's going to be less parents dropping their children off at school. So there's a little bit of a give and take there.
Of course, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you. I would just add that part of this review this year, one of the things that we were able to find is that a lot of kids who are assigned to buses don't ride buses every day, right? They have a family schedule that they manage based on what's available to them. So it could result in kids who have a spot on a bus, not using it, but maybe a Tuesday and Thursday when they have a soccer practice or something like that. So it is a little bit more difficult for us to anticipate it. But with our meetings that we've held with the police department, they confirmed that there was not a tremendous increase in the number of traffic incidents when compared to previous years.
One last question. Would it also factor in enrichment classes for the different schools? I know it's elementary only, but they do offer enrichment programs that some families depend on as a way of keeping their kids occupied for a period of time so parents can continue to work. Will busing options be made available for those kids? Or would they have to be picked up by mom and dad?
It depends. It just depends on the enrichment class. Dr. Taylor, point.
I would just add that it's probably going to be policy-driven. There's always an exception that we can find, and we want to give our parents great service, but it would probably need to be a part of a policy discussion that's larger and captures, like, for example, our ELL students. They have a particular bus for a particular program, but not for every program. And so we want to make sure that we're being equitable in that distribution. So we will definitely keep that in our discussions with our policy committee.
Thank you. That's it.
I'd like to offer the board members, school board members, an opportunity to make any remarks.
You go. No, you go.
Thank you again to Mr. Burnside and his team. They've done a great job of putting together this data and meeting a lot of our data-driven requests and questions. So as Mr. Burnside said, we are trying to capture as many students as possible, also being fiscally, responsible. I mean, we have banks that are dying. I was just joking, like every week I get a new update that one of my bills is increasing, but our salaries aren't all increasing. So we are definitely trying to be mindful of what we're asking of the community, and also being mindful that we have an integration initiative and that the community has been very loud and clear that they want to have transportation for their students. They love that we're integrating. But, asking a 5-year-old to walk 1.5, 1.75 miles to their school is a hardship, and not every family can drive their child to school. So with that said, I'm happy that we are at this 1.25. Love to get to 1 mile, but from a financial standpoint, it's high. And as Mr. Burnside said, they're working on the routes, and we're not voting today. This is about info gathering and sharing and brainstorming. The Roots will be able to also let you know like how we are trying to be very smart and aggregating and filling the buses. And who knows, there could be, maybe we find out that we need 10 buses and not 14. I mean, we have to have that data, obviously, so that we can pass that along to you so that you feel armed and secure that what we're asking for makes sense.
I was just going to say, and it's nothing that the district hasn't heard from me before, but I echo a lot of what President Collum discussed in terms of maximizing the resources and the services that we offer. And I know, every district is different, and in terms of the capacity, that threshold of 75 to 85%, that could be a best practice, it could be a district determination, but I do think that we should be looking at, from a routes perspective, maximizing the routes, making sure that we're looking at tiering. I know our transportation department's in the process of doing all of this, but looking at various solutions so that we understand as a board and as our township officials that the resources are being fully utilized to their capacity. So, and I'm confident that work will get done, but it is something that I want to make sure gets done.
Thank you. And my personal remarks echo a lot of what has been already expressed. I want to thank the board, and I want to thank administration, Dr. Taylor, everyone for their tremendous efforts in bringing us to where we are. This is a great info sharing. I really appreciate that you tried to get as close to the 1 mile as we instructed while also being fiscally conservative. But as the discussion has, unfolded here today in this meeting, I think there's a little more opportunity here to make further adjustments to this data as we look at the routes and we build greater efficiency and capacity, both in terms of the routes and tiered routes possibly, and ensuring that we're maximizing capacity on those buses as much as possible based on the existing data. Maybe it isn't 1.8, maybe it's a little bit less than that, but let's take a look at that. And obviously, we're not making a decision tonight, as been already expressed, and we'll know more about these numbers as well as what the budget looks like for the district, and we'll be in a better position, more informed, to make a decision at that time. Are there any other questions or remarks from the Board of School Estimate at this time? Ms. Hilton.
I do. I have a question that's been lingering for a while, and I know the answer, but I think it's important that I ask it anyway. And that is, we're all here dealing with this thorny thicket because of our intentional integration program, right? We know this. We've done this on purpose, that we've changed the way that we assign children to schools. And I just have to put it out there. Is there any appetite from our administration or from our Board of Ed on adding in some flexibility on the intentional integration program to allow for some flexibility on school assignments? And again, I think I know the answer, but I just feel like I need to put it out there.
Dr. Taylor, please.
Thank you for that. We've had very passionate conversations about that. I'm sure that you're aware of it. And throughout this journey for almost 4 years now, I've worked with multiple boards as boards are shifting and folks are coming on and going off. And so, but the priority has always stayed the same based on the annual votes that have occurred in support of intentional integration. And I think that we've been lauded as a district for being brave enough to take on this work and doing so in a consistent manner. Doesn't mean that we can't learn from our work, and we are continuing to publish this work for the public to be as transparent as possible. I can tell you that I think our work is really innovative and it's being shared across the nation, believe it or not. I'm presenting at the University of Wisconsin on this work next month. Because the results are so consistent. And I would fear that any shift would eat away at those results. We do have very thoughtful designs that were impacted by the feedback that we received from parents. And so, again, it would be a board decision. It will be a policy decision, but I'm sure that all the feedback that we receive, and we do receive quite a bit, we take it under strong consideration.
A final call from Board of School Estimate. Any comments or questions or remarks? President Collins, please.
I was just giving everybody else a chance. Mr. Burnside, do you have banked cap that you utilized in the proposed budget?
Yes, that's the healthcare adjustment I was referring to.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was,
Can I give a?
I was curious about the healthcare adjustment because it was broken out for separate, and I'm trying to understand how that works.
yes.
Can I give you a lead in,
Okay,
Mr.
there it is.
Burnside?
1,836,324. Yes, and that's a great question because we have to use that before we can even come to you and ask for money above the 2% cap.
Okay, so that was applied, follow me, so that's being applied to your existing budget. So right now, the proposal that you've made to the Board of Education has you at a 2.33% tax impact?
Okay, so the banked cap or healthcare adjustment
Yes.
is for the 23-24 budget?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And then yours, your question is,
The tax levy increase for the schools being proposed without the request of the Board of School Estimate is at what?
okay, 3.43. So you've got your 2%, and then you've got your healthcare adjustment at 1.43. So that's the 3.43 combined.
Ooh. All right, so that's bad news. So if my colleagues on the municipal side, if you haven't seen the Board of Education presentation, the preliminary presentation, so that number is right now, the floor of what you're looking at is plus the 1.43?
For courtesy transportation. Yeah, you would add, you would add the 1.43.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. Right now, without the transportation,
I'm sorry.
what is your total tax levy increase?
Three
Healthcare, just
3.43.
3.43%.
Yeah.
And then plus the request from the Board of School Estimate, that brings the total request at 4.83%.
Correct.
So the request to the, and assuming that's what you guys adopt, because, is this on? Yeah. So the request of us is to go above the levy cap 2.83% then? 4.83 minus 2? No.
So the 1.4% is for the courtesy transportation.
Yes.
You add that to the 3.43, and that's where you got the 4.83.
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, what were you asking?
So we're at 4.83.
Yes.
And your levy cap is 2%.
Correct.
So are you asking the Board of School Estimate to go 2.83% above?
Nope, only 1.4.
Is it because the healthcare is a cap exemption?
The healthcare adjustment that gets approved by the Board of Ed.
Okay,
Not
so
the
that's a
Board of School
cap
Estimate.
exemption, and it's being used with bank cap. So your only request of us is the 1.4%.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Thank you for clarifying that. You also have, now, it was a separate question. What's your current fund balance right now? Because I know that you applied a certain amount of anticipated fund balance to the budget to bring it down for taxpayers. What's your overall fund balance?
1 second. That's the 3.
Yes,
Three. Yep, 3.8 million.
3.8 million?
Yeah.
That's low. It's very low. And then the last question is, within the presentation to the Board of Education, you noted within the existing transportation line item that there's a 1.65 million increase to existing transportation outside of the Board of School Estimate. But I noted that one of the items was transportation redistricting. is that also covering what the Board of School estimate is considering? Because it was about a 16% increase, I believe it was, within your existing operating budget.
So that's for the expansion of intentional integration.
So that covers some of the stuff we're doing here and considering, or no?
No, this would be in addition to that.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just clarify to my colleagues. I'm sorry, I did a deep dive today, like I told you. The overall transportation costs were going up about 16% within the actual proposed budget, if I'm stating that correctly. There was several reasons why, also special education, transportation, things of that nature. So that is contained within the budget, taking kind of a double hit because the transportation costs there are already going up, and then the proposal carries over to what we're considering is also a 14%, let's call it inflationary cost on top of what the school district incurred last year, or this current year, planning for next year. So it is,
Also,
it's a
that,
huge number.
that also covers a lot of special ed
Yeah.
as well.
That, I saw that highlight, and I know that you guys always reiterate the piece of the pie we're talking about in the transportation realm is what, 12.5% for general ed students? Yes. So that number is significantly, it's exorbitant once we get outside of the subset that we're talking about right now. Just a couple more calculations to share with you guys, and I'm happy to share this Excel spreadsheet because I just wanted apples to apples comparisons. It makes life easier. Is that with 1,502, that's our baseline of transportation of 914, plus what the school district or the Board of Education is proposing, which is 588 more additional students. Follow me here, about 1,500 students, about proposed 38 buses, total budget close to $5 million, using the estimated cost per bus of $130,000. What this works out to is close to $3,200 per student. That's a really high rate. That's not obviously any knock at the district, but that is an exorbitant cost to provide transportation to a student. If we gave this check to a family, it's literally $18.27 per day, both ways, and $9 a ride. I like putting that number out there just so that when we think creatively about subscription busing, can we afford to future subsidize any type of subscription? I don't believe we can. I use that number just for us to think about how large it is, how important the efficiency of routes are, even if it means 10 more minutes on the bus to reduce the vacancies. When you think of each empty seat as $3,200, it really adds up, especially since last year we were at 50% capacity, right? So 600 times that amount is, I would consider opportunity cost to actually have a student sitting in that chair. So from my perspective, I can't emphasize enough that when this does come back to us, I think it's so important that the routes are finalized. I had hoped that based on our conversations back in October, that we would be a little bit further along in the process at this time, acknowledging you guys have a lot going on, but that when we got together at this point in time, we might have that type of information to know if we have tiers, what type of capacity we were able to get in there, whether it was 75%, 85%, or my recommended 100%. But I think those numbers are really important for our next meeting when we actually have to vote on this proposal.
So, yeah, I'm excited just about as much as anybody to get the new routes, but everything's going to look drastically different for next year. We are going to have a lot more students on the buses, and we're going to have a lot more buses on the road. And all I can say is we just finally chose 1.25 miles about a week ago. It takes a long time to get these routes going, and our director is working diligently on those right now.
With this type of expense that we're looking at, I mean, I go back to that 5 million number, 38 buses, et cetera. Has the school district considered just bringing in a consultant to assist your director of transportation? I can only imagine this is a complete beast of an operation to get to maximum efficiency, can we take some of this and guarantee, a study would be fully supported? Or do you feel like you have the professional capacity in-house?
So Tammy's got over 25 years' experience. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's excellent.
Okay, but you do have one person trying to figure this out, or is there a team?
No, there's just one, but she's excellent.
Okay, I'll trust you at that. I'll totally trust you at that then. And then I think those are all the suggestions that I have for now. And by the way, because we didn't do announcements, Trustee Karen Hilton had a birthday yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday. Happy birthday.
No, thank you so much, President Collum, because I do think that this cost per student number is really helpful. And my question to the district would be, do we know what the average cost per student for transportation is statewide? Because are we an outlier here in terms of the level, the $3,272?
I can certainly look that up, and I'll have that for the next meeting. I don't know it off the top of my head.
And just a reminder that, the policy shift to the 2 miles from the previous board was concerning the costs, right? And so this is kind of the heart of that discussion and that really tough decision. And so keeping that in mind, we understand and we try to be as efficient as possible, but also understanding that for a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old being on a bus, 2 hours of their 9-hour day is very significant, right? It's going to have unintended consequences. So we're also being mindful of that as well, and not wanting to, for any of us who had small children, having them sit on a bus for that long to start their day and to end their day. Anything over 45 minutes becomes a challenge, but we'll do all we can. And Mr. Burnside is correct that we're fortunate to have a supervisor of transportation who just has 25 years of successful experience.
Mayor Daffis, just last question, and I think we discussed this a little earlier today. So in terms of process, I know we're not voting tonight, but I just think it would be so inappropriate and in poor form for us not to give our colleagues on the Board of Education an indication that what direction we're at least moving in. It would be mortifying to be in May and find out the Board of School Estimate is actually voting this down. So while there's not a actual vote tonight, I do think it would be wise for us to at least provide insight so that their team and their professional staff can proceed. If there was all no's on this, then that's wasting a lot of people's time. So if that's appropriate, Mayor Daffis, could you kind of facilitate where the Board of School Estimate suggests we move forward or
Certainly.
accept the recommendation type of thing?
Certainly. Before we do that, I do believe we had one other question.
Sorry, one final question is just in terms of the reductions to the budget from supplies, tuition, and insurance. Could you walk us through like the tuition piece of it, the 1.1 million, where that?
So without getting into too much detail, we had some students that are not going to state facilities, so they're coming back in-house.
Thank you. And before we vote, I just wanted to thank the district, but also a special thank you to the FFT chair because she did a lot of work on this. So thank you.
Yes, and again, we're not taking official action tonight. There is no official vote for those of you here with us in person and those of you watching us on live stream. So should we just go around the table then and just kind of give a sense of where we are individually? We can start on the South Orange side, keep it consistent.
A lot to digest. The demographic per quarter mile was another question that I had, but I want to make sure that I digest all the information that you have provided. The question is sort of a straw poll. That's where we are. I'm inclined to after we get more information and you continue to work through the routes, I'm inclined to say I'd be in favor.
Do I have to say?
Well, you can say
It's
you're
all right.
not sure.
It's a straw poll.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
inclined to say no at this point.
Right. Until, I mean, do you want to give greater context? You don't have to, but no forever, but for additional information becoming available.
Honestly, I'd like to see more flexibility in the integrated, the.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to see more, going back to my question, I'd like to see more flexibility in terms of the placements of the
School
assignments to
assignments.
schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. President Cullum?
Sure. So I accept the Board of Education's recommendation of the 1.25%, but I do reiterate.
Miles.
Oh, I'm sorry, 1.25 miles. But I do strongly emphasize that I do believe we can get that number down significantly with efficiencies. And I will also add the caveat that if we go with this 1.4%, that the district, and I don't mean to say this disrespectfully, but if numbers come in lower as you proceed through the school year, that it's not used for other intended purposes other than what was designed for by the school estimate. So say you end up saving $200,000, whatever it may be, it should be reverted back to providing more elementary school students opportunities for transportation, shifting it towards the 1 mile. So hopefully that was helpful, but right now I definitely accept the recommendation and the work that the Board of Ed has done.
Thank you. We'll move over to Maplewood side.
Thank you. So I appreciate all the work that everyone here has done. I also appreciate the high cost of transportation as I deal with that in my day job, and I know that those numbers are really high and the state does not fund enough. I'm concerned about the taxes going up 4.83% because I know in Maplewood we're talking about raising to 3.5, and I know South Orange is raising above that. So it's a heavy toll on our constituents. So that would be my concern. So I think I would need some more information. I believe in busing. I believe our kids need to be able to get to school, and I believe that it's a burden on working parents right now and our families. But I feel like we do need to see about efficiencies and to figure out if we can get that number lower.
Terrific, thank you. Ms. Craig?
Ooh, part of me wants to just go abstain because I really need more details. And in all honesty, there's so much already being tacked on to our families, including, like you said, the local taxes going up and the stress of having to get your kid possibly from one town to another for school. I also agree a bit with Ms. Hilton. I think as much as we're being trailblazers and moving forward with this gigantic initiative, I think we're trying to jump too quickly into these large numbers. And I think if we allowed parents to have a little time to adjust to that, it would be better, particularly for parents who may have multiple kids. I couldn't even imagine coming up with $3,200 a year per kid if I had more than one child. I don't really have a direction right now I'm going in other than I need more data. I need more data.
So my opinion is I accept the board's recommendation at 1.25 miles. It's pretty close to the 1 mile that we asked for when we met before. But I too am not convinced by this initial data share that we received. I think we can get that cost significantly lower from 1.8 with greater capacity and efficiency. And I look forward to that. We are mindful of the burdens that, on our households. We are facing very difficult budgets on the municipal side, as you are on your side. And we cannot continue paying for everything on the backs of our working families in South Orange and Maplewood. But that being said, we have certain realities and we have important interests and initiatives to balance. There is no integration without transportation. We've said this over and over again. It remains true, will always be true. And I think if we can get these numbers lower and be able to get to the 1.25 miles for elementary students only, I think would be in a better place. So that is how I'm leaning myself. Thank you for that. All right, so at this point, we are going to turn it over to public comment. I believe that we already have a couple questions that have come in online for us. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Burnside to administer public comment. Oh, yes, certainly. Excuse me.
Just a quick question. So in tallying that up, in tallying that up, there's 3 yeses, a no, and then 2 need more data. So like, what's the process from here, I guess? Just in terms of like, yeah.
So I think from the notes that we've taken, we understand the information that would make folks feel more comfortable. So between now and the next meeting, we will definitely prepare for that and share it ahead of time. Additionally, when our budget is finalized, we'll also share that from the county for everyone's edification. And just one piece here to make sure that we all leave with the same information. The need for transportation past 1.25 miles is not an outcome of our work in intentional integration, right? This is addressing a concern brought by parents who lost transportation based on a shift in policy for previous courtesy transportation, just so that we all leave with the same information. So, and once we have that information, the board will have its its next budget meeting, and after that meeting, we'll have a finalized budget that the board can consider, and we'll plan the next meeting in the window that Mr. Burnside shared. Thank you. Of course.
But just a follow-up to that, then with respect to all the work that has been done, and I don't know if we could put an exact percentage on it, but I was thinking the exact opposite, that the intentional integration and the purpose there too was manifested through the work that was being done and the presentation, and my vote in the straw poll was largely influenced by the idea and the virtues behind the intentional integration. So I'd like to see, as those quarter-mile options have been teased out, what impact it has on the intentional integration. What is the connection, the correlation between the intentional integration, our plans there too, and the transportation reflected in this proposal?
Great question. And so let me rephrase it to make sure I understand it, right? If we're looking at a 1.25 mile shift, how much and what percentage of that shift of those students placed in that 1.25 to 2 mile distance based on their placement with intentional integration? The reason why that would be difficult for us to do and compare, and for those who may not have been aware, prior to integration, due to lack of space, about a quarter of our kids were already going to school outside of their neighborhood school. So they were already being placed elsewhere, right? And so what we did was create a placement plan that took into consideration the socioeconomic status for each group that was being placed, so that our schools would better reflect the community as a whole. And so it might be difficult for me to say this group of students were placed within this 1.25 to 2 mile due to intentional integration, because you're talking about just kindergarten, first grade, and next year that would be second grade and 6th and 7th grade. So we can carve it out a little bit, but I just want to make sure that folks were aware that this wasn't a correlation piece where intentional integration created the need for this. It was a policy shift based on previous integration work with the Marshall Bolden group and the Seth Boyden opt-in.
Very helpful, thank you. And that's why the slide, the demographic slide, to me was one in conjunction with me asking follow-ups with the routes.
Right.
It was me trying to think between the lines as it impacts intentional integration. So, right. Thank you.
Great question. And one of the things that we shared in our recent presentation on III was that one of the improvements was that, the students of color who were traveling the furthest, that has shrank a little bit. And we believe that when Bolden now becomes a K-5, it will shrink even more, because we'll have another place that kindergarten students can be placed I guess, to their closest school and still create that socioeconomic status balance within that grade level. So it's definitely not an apples to apples piece. So I want to make sure that we shared that.
Okay, so we are going to go to public comment. Excuse me, President Collins, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Madam President, you guys have what you need. That was just kind of a clear vote, and so now Bobby's a need more data person, right?
I am I would still be more inclined to get data prior to saying a convincing, overwhelming yes. So yes, I'm a
So we have 3 maybes,
Asterisk.
1 no, and 2 yeses.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it there, although I think that we're all saying that we need more data. I don't think anyone is saying that we don't need any more data, but we want to be as, tip our hand a little bit so that the board knows where to go from here. So does the board feel like they have direction, Dr. T? Do you feel like you have direction? Does administration understand and feel like they have direction?
Yes, and the routes will be closer to complete by then, if not already ready to go out to bid.
Right, the routes are a key part of this, absolutely. Okay, terrific. Public comment, here we go. Mr. Burnside, take it over.
Thank you. Please note that public speaks is not a time for dialogue with the Board of School Estimate. It is an opportunity for you to share comment with the Board of School Estimate. In addition, by law, administrators and Board of School Estimate members are not permitted to publicly discuss issues requiring confidentiality. While we may not respond to all comments, all input shared with the Board of School Estimate is taken very seriously and will inform future deliberations and work by the Board of School Estimate. Each individual will be given 3 minutes to speak. Please do your best to stay within the time afforded to you. And I'll go online first. Dale Short.
All right, thank you for taking my comments. I'll keep it short. The school board was irresponsible, short-sighted, and cruel for implementing the integration initiative without taking into consideration the obvious transportation and financial impacts it would have. I push back on the idea that the transportation problem is not linked to the initiative. The policy was changed because continuing the old policy under the intentional integration initiative clearly was infeasible in the school budget. In the last school board election, the town sent a clear message that change is needed. I hope this board also sees that change is needed. Before undertaking a $1.82 million transportation spending increase that will continue in perpetuity, the school board should be forced to make changes to this clearly important program that will reduce the transportation need. Change is possible and already part of other district programs like Montclair and the Berkeley Unified School District. The improvements possible include using a less chaotic assignment algorithm, incorporating controlled parent choice, allowing hardship transfers, keeping streets together to facilitate carpooling, utilizing existing busing resources more efficiently, and making use of state-funded busing distances. I also ask you to consider the bigger picture of what it does for diversity in this town when it's only accessible to residents who can afford the annual equivalent of basically driving a car off a cliff once a year in what they pay in their taxes. I hope this board sends a message in reply to this levy increase request that the transportation problem needs to be fixed with more than just more spending. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Ray Beck.
Thank you for recognizing me. I want to make 2 very quick points. I'm incredibly alarmed that we have elected township council members who continue to erroneously connect the transportation issue with the intentional integration plan. We have long had hazardous routes in our 2 towns. We have well before any conversation about the intentional integration plan, we have recognized that there were routes that were unsafe for our children to cross. These are issues that are absolutely not connected. What we do know is that they're being linked by those who oppose any model of school outside of what they're calling neighborhood schools. These neighborhood school models would retain the virtually all-white school environment of schools like South Mountain Elementary and Tuscan Elementary that they had in the past. We cannot continue along that neighborhood schools route. But I think it's important that we separate the two, and that we do not talk about the intentional integration plan as resulting in creating a transportation issue. That is factually just not true. That being said, I want to encourage the School Board of Estimates to please reconsider all support for this proposal. $1.8 million, or as Sheena so accurately pointed out, $3,200 per student is a preposterous amount of money for us to be requesting. Our towns cannot afford it. Yesterday, as a CHS parent, I received an Amazon wish list for our school library because the CHS library is underfunded. If the School Board of Estimates wants to commit dollars to something, they should do it for a project that has concrete educational outcomes for the children of our district. Transportation, in fact, does not have that outcome. I am begging you, if you wanted to spend $1.8 million, American girls are experiencing suicide completion rates at the highest rate in recorded history. You could invest that money in the parenting center so that we could build better socio-emotional supports. We could build out our social services program. We could build out our guidance counseling program. There are so many other more urgent needs for that kind of expenditure. If the School Board of Estimates wants to levy the towns for taxes, please let it be connected to actual educational and social emotional outcomes for our young people, and not for transportation for a very small subset of the school community. I beg of you. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all online comments. Now we'll switch to in-person. First up, Sarah Connolly.
Good evening, Sarah Connolly from South Orange. I want to take a minute and thank those of you who have spent time trying to find a solution to these problems. It's a massive undertaking. I now know more about transportation than I ever thought I would. But having said that, I just have a few points that I want to touch on. Mr. Burnside, during our petition and some of our hearings and discussions with the district, we were quoted a bus rate of $110,000 in January of 2023, and that was based on emergency pricing. You're now coming back 2 months later and telling us the price has increased by $20,000 a bus. My hope is that upon receiving that number, you gave significant pushback. And if you believe there was price gouging going on, you flagged it appropriately, raised it to Dr. Taylor, who I assume would then raise it to the other authorities who would need to take care of a price gouging situation. Having said that, I question the $130,000 quote, given the information we received back in January of this same year, which was $20,000 less. I'm concerned about a few things that are not included in your estimates, and I'll try to go through them quickly. There is no accounting for hazardous route designations. So even if the board adopts a new transportation policy allowing for transportation of students 1.25 miles and beyond, you still have that pocket of students who live 1 mile to 1.24 miles. That's West Montrose families going to Marshall. That's a significant number of Seth Boyden families. Those children will need to be bused by law, and those figures need to be included in any proposal that you are making to the school, to the Board of School Estimates. There also is no accounting for buses needed for field trips and extracurricular activities. It recently came to my attention at the Bolden PTA board meeting that the district has put together a field trip committee to examine field trips across all school buildings. There's a disparity between South Mountain and, let's say, Seth Boyden, and the number of field trips that these schools are allowed to finance. And there is an attempt underway to equalize that. Let's have the same number of field trips for each building. Absent from this committee, okay, the committee is made up of teachers, school administration, central office, PTA board members. There is not a transportation rep on that committee. So there's no consideration for how we're going to transport these students for field trips since we no longer own buses.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Next is Will Meyer.
Hi, Will Meyer, South Orange. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, so apologies if I'm a little extemporaneous. First of all, thank you very much to the board and Mr. Burnside for the efforts that you have taken to work on this transportation plan. I think it is very important for us to support the crucially important work that we are doing to integrate our schools, to facilitate transportation for the hardship that some families are experiencing in getting to their schools. While 1.25 miles is clearly an amount that is not what everyone would want, it seems like it makes some sense. I would agree, of course, the numbers are outrageously high. I mean, we're in sort of Uber territory here, not counting the short surge pricing that would happen during school mornings. But getting that down lower is obviously an important thing, and I really hope that that's able to happen. But the reason that I wanted to speak tonight is that I know that, you know, I've heard from Trustee Hilton, Board Member Kripe, regarding the flexibility in the integration plan, and that makes me very nervous. You know, we are at the point here where we are seeing where the rubber meets the road. We're seeing some of the actual dollar amounts that are involved in the historic work that we are doing to meet our legal obligation and our moral obligation of addressing historic imbalances, addressing segregated neighborhoods, addressing elementary schools, and to a degree middle schools that have really disparate rates of students from different races and different economic backgrounds. And this is work worth investing in. And if we are looking at a dollar amount and saying, you know what, this feels like too much money, why don't we step back our racial integration work? That seems like the wrong direction to me. So I hope that everyone will come together and brainstorm how we can get these costs to an appropriate point where the town can pay for them, and acknowledging that we do have a huge number of other items. We have schools falling apart. We have academic achievement rates that are well below where we want to see them in different places. We have special education struggles that are very important to me. So this is one of a lot of competing obligations, but it is an important obligation. And I really hope that we are not going to allow tightening purse strings to choke this integration initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all public comment.
Mr. Burnside, is there anything else you wanted to share this evening?
I can't wait for the routes.
Okay. Dr. Taylor, absolutely.
As we prepare to adjourn, I just want to make sure that we, again, keep top of mind the tragedy that occurred in Nashville. Our families and our staff members have received from our office a communication on that, and I think it'll be appropriate for us, Mr. Mayor and Madam Village President, to maybe close with a moment of silence.
I think that's very appropriate. Why don't we take a moment of silence now before we adjourn? Please join us. Thank you. I move that we adjourn. Go ahead.
Before we move to adjourn, there was just a couple, I'm wrapping my head. I mean, it's such a big issue. We've all received thousands of emails over this. During the public speaks, there was a great question that was asked was right now, the school district is in the process of its hazardous routes evaluation. Do you have any indication of how that will or would not impact the work that's being done here right now? Because depending on how many routes come out, it could change these numbers and either be more advantageous or be worse.
Sure. We have a draft, but we don't have a final report yet, so I'm reluctant to release any data just because we're still waiting for the final draft.
I just asked that before.
Final report, I mean.
Yeah, before the final report, again, it's always helpful when we get things really well in advance because we're going to stick it in the Excel spreadsheet and see what that's looking like. But your consultant has completed at least preliminary findings of.
Yes, we're in the process of scheduling time with the local police departments to go over that report and get some feedback from them as well.
Okay, thank you. And all I wanted to just say was thank you to Mr. Short and Ms. Beck and Ms. Connolly and Mr. Meyer for coming to a board school estimate meeting at 5 o'clock to provide feedback on this.
Any other final comments? Okay, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Is everyone in favor?
All opposed?
Thank you.